Hi dear. Hello everyone. Welcome back to channel sharing knowledge on comprehensive personal development through books. In 1957, the Swedish Academy awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature to a French writer. For this reason, with his clear and sharp vision, he has shed light on various human problems in our time. That genius writer is Albert Camus, and he has become one of the youngest Nobel laureates in human history. Camus was a famous philosopher, novelist, and playwright who devoted his life to discovering the meaning of life. At the age of 29, he wrote my profound thoughts on the value of a person's life in the novel The Study of Death, and it is also the book that today I want to introduce and share with you, the book called The Myth of Sisyphus. Through one of the contents, life is absurd, what should we do? In ancient Greek mythology, because Sisyphus offended the gods, he was punished by pushing a giant boulder up a steep mountain. However, every time Sisyphus used all his strength to push the boulder to the top, it would immediately roll back down to the foot of the mountain. Sisyphus had no choice but to go down and push the boulder back up to the top again. This continues day after day, for eternity. In the eyes of the gods, only meaningless and hopeless labor is the most terrible punishment. And isn't this hopeless nature very similar to our lives? Don't you see, we are repeating ourselves every day? Today repeats yesterday, today's rhythm continues tomorrow, familiar work, familiar habits. It seems most of the time that we can solve our tasks without much use of the mind. We wake up, drive to work, eat, and sleep, and then repeat Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday. The rhythm is the same. One day you will suddenly ask yourself a question: why? Why do we have to repeat life day after day? Then you can't help but look back on your life. What's the point of living like this? We've been busy like a programmer, just to get things for tomorrow and later, and just keep running after the future like that. Finally, one day people realize that they are 50 years old, 70 years old, and then have to face something else: death. Death is always there waiting for us, and it's getting closer and closer. You will see that for many people, there will always be times when they have no tomorrow. When there is no tomorrow, there is no future. So, according to you, where should the meaning of life for these people be placed? This is a passage that was reproduced in the book and is also a metaphor that the author wants to tell everyone, that we are existing in an absurd life. The nature of life is absurd. Imagine that we have mountains. On the peaks of these mountains, there will be titles like doing well, promotion, retiring. We repeat every work every day to climb the peaks of this mountain. We always think that if we are busy for a while, it will be okay, pay off the mortgage, everything will be fine. Try to make money, and we will have a better time when we retire. However, life is an endless river. After overcoming this obstacle, there will be another obstacle waiting for us. It's like struggling to push a rock up a mountain, eventually reaching the top. When you are ready to celebrate and want to take a deep breath to enjoy it, this rock immediately rolls down. This difficult problem will never end. We keep pushing the rock up, but when it reaches the top, it will immediately fall down. The end point of the path you are going will soon become a new starting point. This cycle will repeat. We keep pushing the rock up the mountain forever, just like Sisyphus. Most people are just ordinary people. To put it bluntly, most people are really sentenced to death from birth. We are born and then we leave. So, according to the author Camus, the nature of life is absurd. So, faced with absurdity, what will you choose to do? Choose to resist or give up? And how can humans overcome this cycle of reincarnation? If you are imprinted with the image of Sisyphus pushing a rock up a mountain, this is also the time when you begin to realize the absurdity of life, and you are wanting to find the true meaning of life for yourself. Only when you see that life is absurd, can you live this life well. If you read the book for the first time, you will feel extremely confused because it is not an easy book to read. First, we need to understand more about Sisyphus's absurdism to be able to truly understand what he wanted to convey. Absurdity, to put it precisely, is the confrontation between human reason and the absurdity of life on this earth. According to absurdism, the nature of everything is illusion. It shows that when people are born as humans, we are walking on a cold, cruel, and absurd reality. Our fate has been predetermined to be death. This death is like Damocles' sword hanging over our heads and can fall down at any moment because humans with finite existence can never escape the fact that we have been established towards death. Even though stepping into a new life, death still begins to approach from the moment we are born. The second thing is that life in this world is an illusion. According to Lacan's theory of the mirror, when a newborn baby sees his own image in the mirror, he will not think it is himself. But when the child is between 6 and 18 months old, when seeing himself in the mirror, he will feel overwhelmed by the person in the mirror. They will consider the image in the mirror to be themselves, but in fact, it is just a fake image reflected in the mirror. The real absurdity comes from, how can you know that you are not a fake image? Or the person in the mirror is actually you? In short, repeating many lives in illusion. This is an absurdity, but we are not aware of it. That is why only when you suddenly have a realization and wonder whether this life is an illusion, why am I living a monotonous life, repeating day after day? If death is inevitable, then what am I living for? With such questions, this is when absurdity appears, which means you have just realized the absurdity. Faced with absurdity, there are three types of people. Who are you when you know that life is truly absurd? How will we usually react? According to the author, usually people will have three approaches. The first is to choose physical termination. When people realize the absurd reality that life cannot escape the shadow of meaninglessness, the easiest and simplest thing is suicide. It's like standing before the abyss of hopelessness. Rather, life is an exile without salvation. Even when wanting to resist, even when wanting to try to reach the peak, life still ends in absurdity, like a pebble accidentally falling into a deep river. In the end, it sinks and is nothing. So, to solve this absurd situation, they chose suicide. The person who thinks of death is giving voice to anxiety, is asking for recovery to exist after the failure of anonymity. Martin Heidegger argued that we should continue to live in a meaningless world, even when this world has declined and decayed. Besides, his most famous saying is towards death and life. In essence, choosing to end one's life is an admission that life has surpassed us, and humans do not really understand life. Suicide is a choice that represents surrender to the absurd truth. The second type of person is to choose philosophical death. What is ending life philosophically? This means that they believe in a metaphysical eternity and give up or run away from many things in the present. For example, Christians will not commit suicide because suicide means going to hell, and therefore, after death, they cannot have eternal life in the imaginary picture of the other side. Tolstoy also said, "Most people need a god because they have nothing. A few also need a god because they have everything." When people have asked and cannot have, they turn to God. If in the traditional sense God is perfect, but why did God create humans in an imperfect position and have to have a perfect life after death? That is no different from a call to a goal that man has set in the process of climbing to the top of a mountain. If taking eternity as a fulcrum to not want to devote yourself to real life, but believe that there will be a good life after death, then the belief in God itself will also be absurd. There is a philosopher who said, "Before death comes, death does not affect people. After death, people cannot perceive death. Therefore, death is not a bad thing." However, according to Camus, if seeking something metaphysical to protect yourself, to not put in all your effort into the present reality, and give up, then this is actually a form of avoiding reality, living in an attitude of self-deception. The third type of person is to resist. According to the life experience of humans, the theory of reincarnation affirms that even if the body dies, the soul is not destroyed. Or according to the atomic theory, it is stated that time is endless. Atoms make the soul exist in the physical body. When a human life ends, it will disintegrate, but the energy will not be lost, but will combine to create a new human life. This is also the reality. No one can bathe twice in the same river. Even in a new life, you will still be a new person and continue to repeat meaningless things every day. That's why Camus said, "Only because life is meaningless, is it worth living more." The survival itself is the strongest resistance to absurdity. Resistance, first of all, is a clear awareness of the absurd nature of life. Always question the world. Always face yourself and see through the absurd nature of life. Wake up from your mindless daily routines, and stop being a puppet of certain values, of comparison, of power, of domination. In addition, resistance is also expressed in that they no longer live for an illusory future or an imaginary purpose, but live for this moment, for every moment in the present. What are the common self-deceptions that we usually make in life? We often imagine a goal ahead, then dedicate everything you have to meet the requirements, achieve the goal, while living in the future, in a tomorrow with hopeful expectations. In this way, you think that achieving the goal, climbing to the top of that mountain, is the real life. This is the joy and happiness that I have been longing for all this time. While the work before pushing this rock up to the top of the mountain is just a preparatory phase for you to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Everything is temporary, and you will not count this as life. But what will happen if we find out that reaching the top of the mountain is a lie forever? A truth that we can be deprived of future and hope at any moment. We need to know that, because the future and hope in tomorrow are not entirely within our control, then what we can decide is to wholeheartedly live for the present. The author said a very good thing as follows: giving everything to the future means dedicating everything to the present. The meaning of life is the whole of life. Sisyphus keeps pushing the rock up the mountain, knowing that no matter how hard he pushes, the rock will still roll down. So, in such a desperate situation, why doesn't Sisyphus choose suicide? That is because Sisyphus has consciousness. He knows clearly that he will never be able to push the boulder up the mountain, and he knows that this is the punishment of the gods. The reason he doesn't want to commit suicide is because suicide is a sign of cowardice. It is synonymous with affirming that this life is meaningless, affirming that he is incompetent and being punished. But we need to note that the resistance that Camus wants to convey is neither desire nor hope. Sisyphus persistently pushes the rock up the mountain every day, not because he still harbors some hope that he can escape this punishment. In fact, Camus is very resistant to so-called hope. In Camus' philosophy, hope is the most terrible thing in the world because hope can rationalize all previous suffering and disasters, and people will feel that the future will definitely become better. For example, Mencius said, God will give a person a great mission, but first he must make that person feel heartache and suffer, making them tired to the bone. We have many people who agree with this point of view because they think that the suffering you experience is to train you for success. The hardships you experience are to strengthen your abilities that you do not yet have. And this has brought a lot of hope to many people in the future. But for Camus, it is clear that he disagrees with this point of view. He believes that rationalizing all difficulties is the most terrible disaster because there will be people who overdeposit in a vague hope for the future and endure their situation in the present. However, in reality, they do not have any change from the inside out. Camus' point of view here is to give positive value to the suffering life right now in the present, and only then can it confirm the value of one's existence. Sisyphus suffers, but the days of suffering when going up the mountain can also include joy. When he went down the mountain, he found a reason to resist the absurdity in those endless days. Instead of holding on to the hope that he can receive favors from God by working hard, he chose to see the joy in his thorny process. In essence, it is just accepting an irresistible fate, knowing the inevitable tragic consequences each day, but still bravely bearing it all. It also helps us realize the true meaning of life, which is to accept absurdity and focus on living for the present. As Camus wrote, just pushing a rock up a mountain is enough to enrich the human heart. The meaning of life is the whole of life, just as the meaning of the journey is all the moments throughout your journey. Because he decided to enjoy the process of pushing rocks up the mountain, Sisyphus believes that each push is also a moment when he realizes his passionate life. The important thing is not the highest quality of life, but the more experiences, the better. This is the saying that really woke me up. According to Camus, the fact that people feel the boredom of life is beneficial. Only when you realize that this world is an illusion, can you awaken the consciousness of resistance and spark a series of situations that allow you to rediscover the precious things in your own life. So how can we overcome the absurdity of life? Here, the author has proposed 4 attitudes towards life as follows. The first attitude is to resist absurdity with love. Give your love as much as you can. The second attitude is to face the absurdity like a movie that has a predetermined ending. That is, you know you are an actor acting out a prearranged script, but you still try to move forward, experiencing life as much as possible. The third attitude is to dedicate yourself to life and constantly progress, just like the old man in The Old Man and the Sea, who went fishing for many days and only brought back a skeleton. He has the image of a loser, but he has the temperament of not accepting defeat, calmly accepting defeat, and facing death. That means that humans will never surrender to fate. The fourth attitude is to be creative, fighting against absurdity and creativity, by writing down the true state of existence in the absurd world of Camus. Life is meaningless, and we cannot have a hopeful future, but we must still actively engage in the present and live without hesitation. This is a resistance against absurdity, even when the outcome is predetermined to be a failure. Sisyphus's life is also a portrait of Camus. He lived a life facing absurdity. He died on the battlefield when he was not even a year old. His mother was born deaf, spoke unclearly, had sad eyes, and did odd jobs to support the family. His grandmother was rude, overbearing, and often moody, sometimes beating him when he was a child. Camus was the goalkeeper of the school's soccer team. Later, he contracted tuberculosis and had to say goodbye to his beloved soccer. All the difficulties followed him from childhood to adulthood. He was betrayed by his wife, and his wife became an addict. He had tried many times to save his wife, but in the end, all his efforts were in vain. But all these sufferings could not stop Camus, but on the contrary, inspired him to have a deep insight into human nature and gave him a passion for literature. In his short life, he wrote many masterpieces that had a profound influence on the world. Maybe in our lives, we will not be able to become a great person, but who says that ordinary people cannot live in their own style? Even the smallest mosses can still bloom like a peony. As long as you recognize yourself, face all the sun, rain, wind, storms, and distance, you can still grow and bloom right in your process. No one can stop you from becoming the best version of yourself, except yourself. Life is inherently absurd. If you think that something is completely rational and meaningful, it means you are only following the path that you think is rational to achieve it, right? And you think that if you do not follow this path, you are definitely wrong, and when you do not achieve it, you feel like a loser, you will suffer because of it. And in life, we often fall into such difficult situations, but in fact, life does not have to be like that. We don't have a standard answer. Don't believe in any of them. Be careful with all the advice from people who think you should become this or that, and should do such and such. Be wary of people who give advice on your path and plans. The life that you live in itself carries its own greatest meaning. Perhaps this is the answer for ourselves, and the best way to fight against absurdity and nothingness. As Camus said, the important thing is not to live, but to live as richly as possible. I hope we all live in the present, act with love, and live fully in every moment. Thank you for listening. If you find this video useful, please share it with those who need it. Give me a like, click the subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell to watch my latest weekly videos. Once again, thank you and see you in the next videos.